Conference will now be recorded.
Thanks, Chuck. Okay, I'd like to call the Environmental Control Committee meeting to order at 7:30 p.m. Present are committee members Heeman, Glassburn, Williamson, council members Kelly, Schuman, Broussard, Council President Jones, the mayor, the law director may join us, the planning director, human resource director, city engineer, and guests. I've called this meeting this evening so that we could just get an update with regard to the EQ Basin project, also known as the South Interceptor. And so I was hoping that our city engineer, and of course, Mayor, if you'd like to add anything, please, let me know, could give us an update on what progress has been taken. I believe our last chapter of this was that we were going to start getting some soil testing done and some things like that. And Mr. DeFranco, perhaps you can, help us out there with understanding what things have been completed and what the status of that might be.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So we have CT consultants under contract to do the initial investigation and then design afterwards. We had a kickoff meeting with them on January 19th, and their scope includes initially looking at several sites. One area is along the south side of 480 between McKenzie and Bellevue. That includes property currently controlled by ODOT, the school district, as well as a couple private property owners. They're also looking at city-owned property near the Spruce Elementary School off of Windsor. And we're also looking at another city-owned property near Chestnut School, but that property would only possibly benefit stormwater. It wouldn't pertain to sanitary sewer, but we're having CT look at it in terms of environmental, so we have that information in the future if needed.
Okay.
So, oh. Should I continue or do you have questions?
No, I have no questions. Continue, please. Thank you.
Okay. So this initial phase is the site assessment phase, we'll call it. And it involves 2 stages. The first stage is doing a geotechnical, environmental, hydraulics, geotechnical, environmental, and hydraulic assessment. The geotechnical and most of the environmental and hydraulics is office work. However, the environmental assessment does include some field work. So they've been able to do a lot of the geotechnical research, the hydraulic analysis, and some of the environmental. They were planning to do their field work on January 22nd, but that was just after we had the major snowstorm, and the ground has been covered ever since. Yeah. And unfortunately, they need to be able to see the ground surface in order to complete their environmental. So they're hoping to get out there in the next week or two, assuming the snow will melt. Once they have that complete, once they have that stage complete, they'll move on to the second stage where they'll actually start to lay out a site, possible tank configuration, and how we might be able to get access to it.
Okay.
So they're hoping to have the first phase done the middle of March, and the second phase in early April, with a final report by the end of April.
Okay. hold on, I'm having to write all this down because I'll never remember it. Okay. Have they then, how many folks at CT work on this for us? Like, what's their team, size, and how do they interact? Usually like weekly, just?
Good point. I forgot to mention, we've been having bi-weekly progress meetings with them. So every 2 weeks via video conference. We've already had 3 or 4.
Okay.
They have a project manager, and then separate staff members, one for hydraulic analysis, one for environmental, and one for the site layout. Then they also have sub-consultants. PSI is doing the geotechnical investigation, and a firm named Bear Environmental is helping with the phase 1 environmental assessment.
Okay. All right. All right, so we don't really have any actual, soil test results or any of those things yet, but we will probably in the next 4 to 6 weeks, you might expect that we might have some more information that we should convene again and.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I think I'm, pretty well okay with that. I mean, I was just wondering where things were at. Mayor, do you have anything that you'd like to add to that, or Director Lieber, or anyone from administration?
Mr. Chairwoman, I have nothing to add. I think Pete summed it up. Again, the weather's put a little hold on things, but we'll get, as soon as the snow melts, they'll get back on it.
Well, it does sound like the team is making progress. They've laid out, the fundamental plan and what their action will be. We're just waiting on some weather. So yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Director Lieber, anything or?
Nothing additional. Pete and I have been on those biweekly calls, and I think their desk work has outpaced their field work, but it will catch up here hopefully shortly.
All right. Are there any questions from committee? Any questions from council? Mr. Schuman, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So have we done anything in regard to acquisition, any of these properties? Anything at all? Or are we waiting to find out what the best site is going to be? Is that the deal? Mr. Mayor, Kim?
I can speak to that. Certainly, we have a couple of sites that we're investigating, and so CT's recommendation on site will play a big role in property acquisition, but we've made great progress with ODOT. We have an agreement in a form that their legal team and our law director have approved, and then CT has also been engaged to perform the surveying and the legal descriptions and to provide the conveyance support required for any of those parcels that might be required. So they're all kind of moving together, moving ahead together, I should say. So
that's good news. If I may.
Yes, please.
So in regard to the open retention, are we going to kind of be building these at the same time? Is that, or do you see us doing the one first and then going into the next?
Councilman Schuman, I think I can answer this question. I think the EQ basin will take a little bit of time, but I can see us doing some stormwater retention, actually finishing some stormwater retention before an EQ basin, but they'll be working at the same time on it. Good. Again, stormwater detention is it's not very complicated. And as long as we have a suitable property for it, we would be eager to get on that right away. And I think there's monies available left over from the Pine project. So we could get on that ASAP. We would still at the same time be on top of the EQ basin, but it just will take a little longer.
I'm assuming that involves environmental study also, right, to do that kind of work? Pete, is that correct?
Yeah, and that's, we are having CT do that at this time. So they're reviewing all of the possible sites for environmental.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate you having this meeting. Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. Any additional questions from council? Okay, then I think I will conclude our meeting at 7:40 p.m. and I thank everybody for their updates. And Mr. DeFranco, thank you so much. Your technical, I might have to get the glossary of terms from you for my report, but I appreciate your information. It's always very helpful and complete. Thank you. And let the record also reflect before I close that Director Kopfer has joined our meeting as well. And I will now close our meeting at 7:41.